Ms. Cataneo, please tell us your full name.
And Phyllis Cataneo.
And Ms. Cataneo, you're the mother of John Cataneo, the victim in this case?
Yes.
Obviously, Karen Tobie was married to your son, John Cataneo.
Yes.
When did you first meet Karen Tobie?
About 8, 9 years ago.
Okay. And we speak up a little bit.
I'm sorry, 8, 9 years ago?
Did you attend their wedding?
Yes.
And did some event happen after the wedding that you went on with other family members?
We went on a cruise.
Was that back in September of 2000, back in that time frame?
Yes.
Did there come a time in 2004 when you began living with your son, John Cataneo?
Yes.
How did that come about?
John talked me into moving to Florida.
From where?
In New Paltz, New York.
And approximately when did you move down to Florida?
May.
May of 2004?
Yes.
And where did you start living at that time?
My daughter Nancy's, and then John. I was going back and forth until John bought a house.
Okay. So I need to explain that. Does your daughter Nancy also live in this area?
Edgewater.
Okay. So you were going from her house between there and John's house, is that right?
Yes.
And John's house at 319 Center Avenue in Holly Hill?
Yes.
You said something about you were doing that until John found a house.
John was going to buy a house, and I was going to live in John's house, rent-free. I just had to pay the utilities.
And what were the intentions? Who was intending on moving in with John when he found the new house?
Lynn.
And
Karen and the baby, of course.
Okay. Karen, Lynn, and the baby, and John.
John.
And then you would stay in the duplex there at 319 Center Avenue?
Yes.
Now, when you came down here in May and started living there, where was Lynn Blake living at that time?
Next door to John, to the duplex.
The connected portion of the duplex?
Excuse me, yes.
Also at 319 Center Avenue?
I think so, yeah. One is A and one is B, I think.
All right. And then who was living under the same roof in the same duplex area as you and your son? Who else?
Karen and Lois.
Was your son working full-time back during that time frame when you came down here and started living with him?
Some days he worked all the time, and sometimes he didn't.
Did he have a business?
Yes, he did.
And what was the name of the business?
Cataneo Plumbing.
Approximately how long had he been in the plumbing business?
Oh, God. Since he's like 24, maybe? I really don't remember.
And just to get a reference point, was he 45 years old at the time of his death?
Yes.
Did Karen Tobie work
No.
during that time?
No.
Did you also know Lynn Blake back during this time frame?
Yes.
When approximately did you first meet Lynn Blake? In other words, was it months earlier, years earlier?
Yes.
Years earlier?
Yes.
So you had been familiar with her through the years?
Yes.
With Lynn Blake? And did you know her to be a close friend of Karen Tobie?
Yes.
Did you get along all right with Lynn Blake?
Yes.
And generally get along okay with Karen Tobie?
Yes, we did.
And obviously, you're with your son. I take it you got along
Yes.
with your son? What arrangements were there any, if you weren't around and if your son was working, who would primarily care for Lewis?
Lynn.
Would Lewis spend time at Lynn's if she was caring for him at certain times, or would Lynn come over, or both? Explain how that worked.
Well, every day at a certain time, Karen and the baby would go next door. Every day, from 11 to 1, every day.
Next door to Lynn's?
Yes.
And so Karen and the baby would stay over there?
Yes.
How did Karen get around when she wanted to go do things or go to the store or go places? What was her primary means of transportation?
Lynn.
Lynn would drive Karen?
Yeah.
Back during this time frame, would you see both of them on a daily basis?
Yes.
Lynn and Karen?
Yes.
And did you personally notice any any problems that stood out, or any major disputes or anything like that stood out in your mind back
No,
there?
not really.
Did Karen Tobie drink?
Yes.
What primarily did she drink that you saw?
Beer.
Was she able to function appropriately in your mind? I mean, explain her demeanor, what you saw of Miss Tobie.
She seemed fine, even though she was drinking. She could cook, change a diaper, mop a floor,
In your dealings with her, like I said, on a daily basis, did she seem to you to be coherent, understand you when you talked to her, know what was going on?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Did you see her interact with other people also? In other words, with Lynn and with your husband, or with your son, her husband, did you see interaction?
Yeah.
Did she seem to interact appropriately with them? In other words, communicate and coherently respond to questions, things like that?
Yes.
As approaching late June, and I'm approaching the time that your son was killed, were plans being made to attend an event in Georgia?
Yes.
And tell us what that's about, what that was about.
With my other children, grandchildren from New York, and my daughter in Jersey, we were all going to get together for 4th of July. John made all the arrangements, and we were supposed to meet July 3rd.
And was that the upcoming weekend?
Yes.
Just as a point of reference again, June 30th was a Wednesday, is that correct?
Yes. We were supposed to leave that, I think, Saturday morning or late Friday night.
And that was to go to Georgia, and that was for the 4th of July weekend?
Yeah, for a week.
Were those plans that had been in the works for some period of time?
Yes.
Were you packed and getting things together, getting ready to go?
I was in some of the baby stuff, and John's work, but Cameron, none of her stuff were packed or anything. I think she just bought a bathing suit. That's the only thing.
So were you packing, getting ready to go?
Well, my clothes, I was living out of a suitcase, but I had the stuff that I was taking with me packed.
Was your son, John, getting ready to go,
Yes.
packing, getting ready to go?
Yes.
Other than having a bathing suit, did you see Karen Tobie preparing to leave at all?
Nothing.
Did you wonder about that?
She said she'll do it the last minute.
So you actually mentioned something about
Yes.
I'd like you to take you, Ms. Cataneo, to Wednesday, June the 30th. And I'd like to move back in time a little earlier that afternoon. If you can tell us, were you home during that time?
Wednesday?
Yes, on that Wednesday in the afternoon.
Yes.
Well, what was going on there at the house?
John and I went shopping to pick up more stuff to go away. We came home and we ate. We were in the backyard, and I came in early, like 6:30, and then John came in with the baby. And John cleaned the kitchen, mopped the floor, vacuumed, changed the baby, put the baby to bed, and John and I were watching TV.
And just backing up, you mentioned about coming back and then being in the backyard.
Yes.
I'm backing up in time to when you started. Who was in the backyard when?
John, the baby, Karen, and Eddie.
And Eddie being a friend?
Of John's, yes.
Eddie Foley?
Yes.
Did everything appear normal to you at that time?
Yeah.
And I just want to get this straight, is it after being in the backyard you went shopping, or were you in the backyard after
In
returning?
the afternoon, we went shopping.
Okay, went shopping in the afternoon, came home, and then those you mentioned were in the backyard?
Yes.
And that included your husband and included Karen Tobie?
No, my
I'm
son.
sorry, your son. I keep saying husband. Your son?
Yes.
All right. And everything appeared normal?
Yeah.
And was Lewis there also?
Yes.
So the event you talked about when you went inside and John was cleaning and doing things, that was after having been in the back?
Yes.
And who was inside the house at that time?
John, the baby, and I. Karen and Eddie were outside.
Outside where?
In the backyard on the deck.
All right. And at some point, did Eddie leave and Karen
Yes.
come inside the house?
Yes.
And then after that occurred, was inside the duplex. Who was there at that time? Karen, John, Lewis, and yourself?
Yes.
And I'm leading up to where you were. You said at some point Lewis was actually put to bed?
Yes.
And after Lewis was put to bed, what did the rest of you do?
Karen went out next door, and John and I were watching TV.
At some point after you're watching TV, did Karen come back in? And
Yes.
okay, and what did she do when she came back in?
She didn't like what I was watching. She cursed and said she's going to bed. And John says, let her go.
And where did she go from that point?
In her room.
Okay. And when you say her room,
John's room, their bedroom.
okay. And did John and Karen share a bedroom?
Yes.
And then did Lewis have a separate
Yes.
bedroom? Was he about 1.5 or so at this
Yes.
time?
Excuse me. So that we can have a clear record here, could we wait until one speaks and then the other
I'm
give an
sorry.
answer? That's okay. But we just want to be able to be sure that the court can get down everything that's said.
And just John and Karen shared a bed and had one room, and then Lewis, the 1.5-year-old, had another room. Is that right?
Yes.
And where did you stay?
On the couch.
So we're to the point where Karen didn't like what you're watching. She went off and into the bedroom. Explain what happened after that. What did you do and what did John do from that point forward?
We were watching TV, John and I, and then I had pajamas on, and no, I had my clothes on. John and I were eating, then I was going to put my pajamas on. I went into their bedroom. Karen was laying on the bed with her hand over her face with no TV on in her clothes. So I just went in, got my pajamas, came back out, and that was it. And John was still on his, recliner.
And then what did you do once you came out?
Watch TV.
And was John there staying? Did he stay in the recliner?
Yeah.
And at some point while you were there, was there a knock on the door?
John was dozing off on the recliner, and there was a knock on the door. So I looked at him, he was dozing off, so I got up. We never opened the door, at least I don't. And I said, who is it? And he either said, Ron or Don. And I couldn't hear it. The voice was like so soft, I couldn't hear him. And I asked again, and he said the same thing, Ron or Don. And John must have heard him, and he got up, and he says, I'll get it. And then I went around to the kitchen to have coffee.
I take it, do you have a peephole in the door to look through?
No.
Did you ever open the door yourself?
No.
The voice that you heard, you asked twice who it is, and the response was either Ron or Don?
Yes.
Was it a male or a female voice?
I really couldn't tell right now. I mean, it was soft, I thought it was a man,
When you say soft, you mean low?
They were whispering. They didn't talk like a regular talk. It was a soft talk.
And then after the exchange that you talked about occurred, did you see John going to the door?
Yes.
And where did you go from that point?
To get coffee.
Did you see John go outside?
Yes.
When he went outside, did he close the door behind him?
Yes.
After he went outside, did you actually see him go out and close the door behind him? Or when did you
yeah.
last see? You did. And once the door was closed, is when you're in the kitchen area there,
Yes.
getting your coffee?
Yes.
Did you hear something soon after the door was closed?
I heard like it was firecrackers.
That's what you thought in your mind?
Yes.
Is that what it sounded like?
Yes.
What happened after you heard that sound?
Karen came out of the room charging. What the F was going on here? What's all that noise? And there was no noise except the noise from outside the firecrackers, which I thought. And I went to the door and I couldn't open the door. And I says, go call Lynn. Because John's leg was blocking the door that I couldn't open it.
Could you see the leg there blocking the door?
Yeah.
And were you there? Did you see Karen making a phone call at that point?
I made the phone call to 911.
Right, to 911, but did someone call next door
Yeah,
to your knowledge?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I told her to use her phone to call Lynn.
Right.
And she did.
And then did you call 911?
Yes.
At some point, did Lynn come over to the duplex?
Yes.
And did you talk to the 911 operator?
Yes, I did.
And when you were talking to the 911 operator, who was present right around where with you?
Lynn and Karen.
Did Lewis stay? Did he stay in the back room when this was going on?
Tell you the truth, I even forgot about Lewis. He was in his room.
Right. But he wasn't out with
No.
y'all. It was you, Lynn, and Karen
Yeah.
when you're talking on 911. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Cataneo, I'm going to show you what's been marked. State Exhibit A for identification and State Exhibit B for identification. Have you seen these before?
Yes.
Have you actually listened to this
Yes.
CD?
Yes.
That's entitled 911 Call 630-04.
Yes.
And is that an accurate account recording of what happened that evening with regard to you and Ms. Tobie and Ms. Blake?
Yes.
Have you also reviewed State Exhibit B for identification, and it's a 4-page transcript?
Yes.
Have you reviewed that along with the tape?
Yes.
And does this transcript accurately depict the words being spoken there when you were there with Ms. Blake and Ms. Tobie?
Yes.
You know, at this time, the state would offer State Exhibit A for identification and evidence, which is the actual DVD.
All right, any objection to that?
Don't object to A and ask for an instruction on B. And I don't think he's moving B into evidence.
That's
We
correct.
haven't gotten to D yet, but do you have any objection to A, which is the actual 911 call?
No, sir.
To be put into evidence and for that disc to be placed in evidence.
On behalf of Mr. Cooper, we have no objection, so long as it is what it's purported to be. I haven't listened to that particular DVD, but if it's the 911 call, no objection.
All right, without objection, that will be received as state's number 1.
Yes, sir.
And did you say you had a transcript?
Yes, sir, I do. And I want to go ahead and clarify something with Ms. Cataneo. Ms. Cataneo, in here, it has, in terms of the speakers on the transcript, it's got, and you've listened to this, but DISP.
Your Honor, I object unless there's a question. Since there's instructing, and that would be the court's
All right,
problem.
he's going to tie it up with a question.
It's DISAP when you listen, is that the dispatcher on the phone you're speaking to?
Yes.
And where it says Cataneo, is that you speaking?
That is me.
And where it says Tobie, is that Karen Tobie?
Yes.
And where it says, in here, Blake, is that Lynn
Lynn
Blake?
Blake.
And you recognize, obviously, do you recognize your voice?
Yes.
Do you recognize Lynn Blake's voice?
Yes.
Do you recognize Karen Tobie's voice?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, based on an ask to publish the tape, but also ask the jurors be allowed to use the transcript as an aid, although we won't be introducing it into evidence.
Your Honor, our only objection is to the identification of the speakers that's previously announced and invades the province of the jury.
All right, any other objections?
No.
All right, this is not going to be, I'm going to read a jury instruction to you about the transcript and about the tape itself, or we call them tapes, actually it's discs now. I'm going to read this to you. The conversation, the recorded call is being introduced into evidence. The transcript will be distributed to help you, but it will not be. Everybody understand that? And here is the jury instruction. It's number 2.6. You are about to hear recorded conversations. These recorded conversations are proper evidence, and you may consider them just as any other evidence. You are also being furnished transcripts of the recorded conversations. The recordings are the evidence, and the transcripts are provided to you only as a guide to help you follow as you listen to the recordings. The transcripts are not evidence of what was actually said or who said it. If you notice any difference between what you hear on the recordings and what you read in the transcript, you must rely on what you hear and not on what you read.
Okay, I need you to tell me where he shot at on his body. I don't know. I'm in the house with a friend who has. Where is he at? It's outside the front door. Okay. What is it? Is there no one else here with him? Is there no one outside with him? I'm right at the neighbor next door. We called us. We were afraid to go out. Okay, I need to know where he was shot, ma'am. I don't know. I'll go out. This is his mother. I have to go out. Okay, I need to know. Yeah, okay. Oh my God. Hurry up. Okay, ma'am, I have people on the way. I need information. Okay? I need to know where on his body was shot. Open the door. He's locking the door. Where's the neighbor at? She's there. Hello? Yes. I need to know where he was shot at. Yes, he's laying in the doorway. There's blood everywhere. Okay, so you can't tell where he was shot at? Oh, I can't tell. There's blood all around his head. Okay. Is he alive? I don't see it any movement. It's so treats itself. Okay. They're on their way. Okay. I need to know when did this just happen or what? 5 minutes ago. Did you see who did it? No, ma'am. Okay, did it happen right outside your door? Right up. Please sit down before you pass out. Sit down. Sit down. No. Just don't please. Tell me what you know. Okay? I need you to just calm down. I know y'all are upset. I need somebody to tell me what happened so we can find who did this. I have no idea. I really just happened. John went outside. We got the fire tractors, and he didn't come back in the house because he didn't go out and check everything in Christmas Day. And I'll be out the front door. He's lying. He's still asleep to death. Okay? He's laying in the doorway because we're upstairs. Okay. How long ago did it just now? It just occurred? Yes, ma'am. Did it see a vehicle? There's no vehicles around here. There's no people. There's no nothing. His mother said something knocked on the door. Okay, some guy knocked on the front door. Right. Her son went out. Right. And then he was shot. Okay. There's several shots. Okay. I just couldn't believe the last place to get into their house because they unpacked me that door. Okay. Please sit down. I don't want you to just sit there. This is Tobie. All right, I'll let you up this.
Mrs. Cataneo, and here when, in the tape when Ms. Blake is saying, Phyllis, sit down, just sit down, who is she speaking to?
I guess it's me, but I don't remember it,
All right, just because of your state of mind?
I guess.
Do you go by Phyllis?
Yes.
And there's also talking here, there's in the tape, it talked about Ms. Blake coming around the back because couldn't get through the front. Do you know how it is? Do you know how Ms. Blake got there into your house? I mean, did you see or know which?
I object to the form of the question. It's testimonial. It's his interpretation of the tape.
Just rephrase if you would.
Yeah. Do you know how Ms. Blake came in, how she entered into your side of the duplex?
Through her back door, she came into John's back door.
All right. And each of you have a back door?
Yes.
Is it a sliding door?
Yes.
Shortly after the end of this tape, did the police show up, and were they there at the end? There's mention, but did the police show up?
Yes.
Do you recall where you were when the police showed up? In other words, did you stay in your side of John and Karen's side of the duplex, or did you go over to the next door?
I couldn't get out the front door, so it dawned on me to go around the back to the fence on John's side, but I couldn't open it. Then I went back in the house, and it dawned on me again to go through Lynn's to go to the front. And the time I got there, the policeman grabbed me, wouldn't let me go to John.
So where were you when the police arrived?
In the front of the house.
Which side of the house?
Actually, in the middle of the house, closer towards Lynn's house.
So you had it before when the 911 tape was complete. From that point until when the police arrived, you went out the back, tried to go through the fence area, and then went over to the Lynn side.
Right.
I take it the police did talk to you once they arrived? You and others who were there?
Yes.
Do you recall that evening not only talking to police, but were you taken somewhere?
Yes.
And where were you taken?
I think to your office or Sean's office, somebody's office.
Is that what's called the Homicide Investigative
Yes.
Unit
Yes.
over here on Beach Street?
Yes.
Okay. Were you interviewed at that time?
Yes.
Who went with you, to your knowledge? Who else do you remember being there?
Karen was in the police car with me.
At Karen Tobie?
Yes.
And did you go back and stay at the duplex that evening, or where did you go to stay?
I went to stay with my daughter Nancy's.
And then did you stay in the area in the days and weeks after that?
No, Edgewater I stood.
And that's with your other daughter?
Yes.
I'd like to go back, Mr. Cataneo, to a few days before June the 30th. Specifically, June the 26th, the Saturday. Do you recall that day?
Yes.
What was going on that day?
It was Nancy's birthday, and my daughter Nancy, and I was going to John's house to spend the rest of the week there until we go on our trip. And then we pulled into Lynn's driveway, and as we were pulling in, we seen Mr. Cooper coming out of Karen's house. And I asked Karen what he was doing. She says he's working on the pool. And then I forgot about it.
All right. You forgot about it at that time. Did you think about it, remember it after John had been killed?
Yes.
First of all, at that time, did you know who Mr. Cooper was?
No.
Did you learn who he was at a later time and see him at a later time?
Yes.
Okay. The person you saw there, did you see him in the courtroom?
Yes.
Okay, you already did, but just point to him, identify what he's wearing, please.
Your Honor, we'll stipulate to this witness being able to identify Mr. Cooper.
Well, I just want, is it you pointed over there already, is Mr. Cooper the one on the end of the table there in the striped shirt?
Yes, he is.
Is that the person you saw there at the residence with Karen Tobie back on June the 26th?
Yes.
Was anyone else there at that time?
No.
And where was he when you saw him?
Coming out of the front door.
To your knowledge, who worked on the pool?
Only John. He wouldn't let nobody touch the pool.
And did you know of anybody else to work on the pool other than John?
Nope.
Are you aware of any pool work that was needed back on that day?
No.
Did Mr. Cooper speak to you or anyone else? First of all, who were you with?
I was with Nancy.
Did Mr. Cooper speak to either you or Nancy that you saw?
No.
When he was coming out of the door, where did you see him go from that point?
Into his car.
And then did he drive away?
Yes.
And just to make clear, you asked Karen Tobie what he was doing there?
Yes.
She's the one who made the statement about the pool?
Yes.
After your son was killed, did you have much contact at all from that point with Karen Tobie?
No, very little.
At what point would you visit Lewis during that time frame?
That's the only, yeah, when she would let me.
But did you have any contact with her other than going, perhaps seeing her to when you visited Lewis?
No.
And about
Oh,
how
at
many?
the wake. No,
Excuse me?
At the wake, other than that.
So at your son's wake, and then when you
I
went to...
think twice we went to the house.
All right. So 2 or 3 times, once at the wake and a couple times going to see Lewis, is that the only contact you had with her?
Yes.
After your son was killed?
Yes.
And then as far as Mr. Cooper is concerned, did you have any contact with him at all?
No.
Other than that one time you saw him, but other than that?
Right.
Did John grow up in the Staten Island area?
Yes.
Was there someone who lived across the street who went by the name of Ron?
Yes.
And who was that?
It was a friend of my youngest son. It was his friend. And they called him, I think, Ron.
All right. And was that a black male?
Yes, and he was built just like him, and that's why John called him Ron.
And I know you know where, but I just need to do this for the record. I mean, you identified the person you were referring to as Mr. Cooper. Will you just identify Karen Tobie, please, who you've been referring to as Karen Tobie? And you're pointing to direction of the table there? So,
There.
the only woman there among the
Yes.
6 people over there? Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Who would like to, of the defense, Mr. Mott?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go first.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cataneo.
Good afternoon.
Did I hear you correctly say just now that John called Ty Cooper Ron?
That's what I heard, yeah.
You never told us that before, did you?
I don't know if I did or not.
Never told the police that before, did you?
I think so. I don't remember.
You said also that the first time you ever saw Ty Cooper or knew anything about him was on June the 26th when he was walking out of the 319 Center Street.
Right?
That was June the 26th, 4 days before John was shot.
The first time I ever seen him, yes.
All right. In fact, what everybody at the Cataneo Plumbing called Ty Cooper was Coop. Isn't that true?
I don't know.
Even John called him Coop.
I don't know.
You talked to the police on June the 30th after the shooting, correct?
Yes.
You said to them it was someone by the name of Ron, correct?
I said Ron or Don.
Right. And you didn't say anything about Ty Cooper to the police, did you?
I don't know.
Pardon?
I don't remember if I did or not.
Tobie, please, who you've been referring to as Karen Tobie. And you're pointing to direction of the table there? So,
There.
the only woman there among the
Yes.
6 people over there? Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Who would like to, of the defense, Mr. Mott?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go first.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cataneo.
Good afternoon.
Did I hear you correctly say just now that John called Ty Cooper Ron?
That's what I heard, yeah.
You never told us that before, did you?
I don't know if I did or not.
Never told the police that before, did you?
I think so. I don't remember.
You said also that the first time you ever saw Ty Cooper or knew anything about him was on June the 26th when he was walking out of the 319 Center Street.
Right?
That was June the 26th, 4 days before John was shot.
The first time I ever seen him, yes.
All right. In fact, what everybody at the Cataneo Plumbing called Ty Cooper was Coop. Isn't that true?
I don't know.
Even John called him Coop.
I don't know.
You talked to the police on June the 30th after the shooting, correct?
Yes.
You said to them it was someone by the name of Ron, correct?
I said Ron or Don.
And you didn't say anything about Ty Cooper to the police, did you?
I don't know.
Pardon?
I don't remember if I did or not.
In fact, you told the police that not only was this person at the door identifying him or herself as a Ron, but also that it appeared to you that this person was Caucasian.
Yes,
You said that to the police, correct?
I think so.
And in the 911 tape, we heard, did you have the benefit of reading the
Yes, I
transcript?
did.
And it's accurate, is it not, that no less than four times in the 911 tape, that's right after this incident happened, correct?
Yes,
And you mentioned, or the name of Ron is mentioned 4 times.
right.
Now, Miss Tobie went down to the police station on 6:30, didn't she?
Excuse me?
Miss Tobie, Karen Tobie, she went down to the police station on June the 30th, correct?
Yes.
She was so drunk she couldn't make a statement, isn't that true?
I don't think so.
Pardon?
No,
She did not make a statement that night, did she?
we were in separate rooms.
Okay. She had to go home and go to sleep and sober up and come back on July the 1st to make a statement, did she not?
I don't think so.
Now, the door to your side of the duplex at 319 Center Street, isn't it true that the door opens out?
Yes,
And the entryway into the home is such that if one were to open the door with someone standing in the stoop, so to speak, that the door would be in that person's face.
yeah,
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In other words, if the person who was at the door was standing in the stoop, then the door would block them and John would not be able to talk to him until he closed the door, correct?
right.
So that area that I referred to as the stoop is really only big enough to comfortably accommodate one person. I mean, 2 or 3 people could squeeze in there, but I'm talking about comfortably.
All right.
All right. So if John were to be able to see who it was at the door, then because of the way that the door is set up, the person would have to be off of the stoop so that John could see him. John opens the door and the person is just immediately to his left. Is that not true?
John came out.
If I'm John,
Right.
and I'm opening the door's going to open out, correct? Now, whoever was at the door was most likely, although we don't know for sure, but most likely was not in the stoop. They would have been standing aside so the door would open.
Or in front of the walk where you open the door, where it swings, you could be standing right there when you open that door.
Okay. And that afternoon, earlier, up till about 8:30, everyone was out on the deck. Is that correct? When did everyone leave the deck?
We came in the house, we were watching Wheel of Fortune. And Karen didn't like that show, that's why she got annoyed.
What time did Ed Foley leave?
7:45.
Okay. And everybody had been drinking.
John had 1 beer or 2, I didn't have any.
Was Ed Foley drunk?
He was drinking.
And later, did you learn that he was drunk?
No, I'm going to object if it's based on hearsay.
I wouldn't know the difference.
It was based, please rephrase the question, if she had personal.
Do you have any personal knowledge about Mr. Foley's state of sobriety or insobriety at the time of the shooting, which would have been a little bit later?
He was drinking. I don't know if he was drunk or not.
Did he go down to the police station that night?
No, he went home. He went home before this happened.
Okay. I want to get the time sequence correct. You said about, on the 911 call, you said to the dispatcher that the shooting occurred about 5 minutes ago. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And that is because there was some confusion at first about whether it was firecrackers or not, correct?
Right.
And you had to call over to Lynn Blake to ask Lynn Blake to go outside and investigate what had happened, correct? Is that correct?
Right.
So there's some time goes by there, correct?
A minute or two because we had 2 phones in the house.
Right, I understand that. But Lynn Blake was in the house, obviously, when the 911 call was underway.
In her house.
No, in your house, because her
Oh, yes, yeah.
her voice is on the...
No. We called Lynn, and then we called it 911, I think. I don't remember now. You're confusing me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just trying to, that's what I'm trying to understand, but the 5-minute gap, because clearly on the 911 tape, you say to the dispatcher that the shooting occurred about 5 minutes ago. And
Right.
that's what I'm trying to
Okay.
just put that in context, because 5 minutes may seem, under some circumstances, to be a long time, but what I'm asking you these questions about is to understand what happened during that time. Lynn Blake had gone outside to investigate, correct?
Right.
Had to have already gone outside to investigate because she'd gone around the back and come in, and she was inside the house as the 911 call was underway. Accurate?
Wasn't she there? I don't think she was there when I first made the 911. Or did I? I don't remember now.
I mean, it's a very short conversation. The conversation doesn't take 5 minutes, hardly. It's 4
It would
pages.
only take a second for us to call her after I'm on the phone.
Let me try. I'm not trying to confuse you. I'm just trying to help me out. I'm trying to understand the time sequence myself. At some point in time, Lynn Blake is in the house while the 911 call is underway.
Right.
Is it not true that prior to that point in time, Lynn Blake had been outside to verify that John had been shot?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Nielsen?
Thank you, Judge Verona. Good afternoon, ma'am. Back in that time frame when you knew Karen and your son, and you described how you were living there for a while, how often would you see her drink? Was it daily?
Yes.
And is it true that she would start early,
Yes.
8, 9 in the morning,
Yes.
and go all day?
Yes.
And this was a pretty normal practice at that time, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, the trip to Georgia, the family trip that you described, do you remember who all was invited? Could you think you could recall the names?
All my children, all their names?
Yeah.
John, Luann, Nancy, Barbara, my son-in-law T, Angeline, Monica, Thomas, Tori, Karen, Louis, Eddie, and Ruth Ann, and Ruth Ann's daughter, which I forgot her name.
And among those names that you just recalled, you did mention Karen's name,
Yes.
correct? She was invited to go.
Yes.
Are you aware of any plan that your son had at that time to, in fact, use the trip as some type of ruse or some type of diversion where, in fact, what really was going to take place is he was going to take Louis, secret him up to New York, and move away from Karen? Were you aware of that plan?
Definitely not.
Okay. And the day of the shooting, I think you've described some of the events that were taking place at the house. Did Karen's demeanor appear different than it had on days before that? In other words, she was acting normal, correct?
Just that night when I went to check my pajamas, because she never sleeps with her clothes on and she never sleeps with the TV off.
Okay, but that's like pretty much right before the shooting, correct?
No, this was about a half hour or maybe longer. I don't know, it was before the shooting.
Okay, but like that whole day, you know, it was all...
She was fine.
Okay. And you described to the jury that she made the comment about the TV show, she ends up in the bedroom, and that at some point you go in there and you describe that you saw her, she was on her back, laying on her back?
No, on her side, put her hand over her face, covering her eyes.
Okay, and it appeared that she was asleep?
I don't know, just laying there without the TV on, which is very odd.
Okay. Did she acknowledge you when you came in the room?
No.
Would it be fair to say that she appeared to be passed out?
Could be.
And I guess the opposite or the other side of that coin, when you went in that room, you didn't see her pacing back and forth anxiously or anything like that?
No.
And then you described how you gave her an instruction to make a phone call, and she did that, correct?
Yes.
Now, the day that you saw Mr. Cooper at the house, and it was explained that he was working on the pool, did you actually see him in the back part of the house where the pool was?
No.
Okay, and I think you said the first time you saw him, he was in Miss Blake's driveway, or?
No, coming at John's front door.
Okay, so the proposition that, in fact, he was working on the pool, although I understand what your position is, that John did that, but you cannot tell us that he wasn't working back there. In other words, you didn't see him back there?
No.
Okay. And were you aware that there was some work potentially, or work being done, not necessarily on the pool, but to the areas around the pool, some type of landscaping?
That was all done way before that, weeks before that, or months before that. It was all done weeks before that. It was done.
There had been some type of landscaping work, not necessarily on the pool itself, but in the pool area that John didn't do? Is that true?
I don't know who did the work.
Okay.
Maybe Nancy knows, I don't know.
Okay. And you described also, or explained to Mr. Davis, that after your son was shot, those days, I think after initial time period, that you didn't see Miss Tobie as much. Is that correct?
Yes.
And are you aware, ma'am, that she had traveled and was residing or living temporarily, at least in the state of Washington, for maybe 30 or so of those days?
She was in Holly Hill. When we wanted to go see the baby, she wouldn't answer the phone.
Okay, but are you aware that between the time of the shooting and the time of the arrest, for 30 days or so, she was in the state of Washington?
Yes, I knew she was in Washington. I don't know how long, but I know she was there.
She was there, as far as you know, visiting family?
Her father, I think.
Mr. Tobie and
Yes.
her sister?
Yes.
Do you see them in the courtroom
Yes.
today?
Yes.
Where are they?
Mr. Tobie and the sister's right there in the back.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions, John. Thank you.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, just very briefly. Mrs. Cataneo, just with regard to where you went after the 911 call took place, did I hear you right that you ended up at some point over in Lynn's side of the duplex?
Yes, I went.
And actually tried to go out that door and the police told you to stay inside?
I went through her back and I went into the front and got out the front and walked a couple of feet towards John and they wouldn't let me go any further. They told me they didn't want me to say that.
Okay, and basically directed you back in?
Yes.
And back inside?
Yes.
Okay. I know times, you said in the phone call 5 minutes. I mean, I take it with all this going on and the traumatic nature of the situation, are you looking at a watch right now?
No.
And if I understood you right, you heard the person knocking at the door say 2 words.
Yes.
Said what you thought would be something like Ron or something like that, and then you asked again, and it was repeated. Is that right?
Yes,
So you heard 2
two
words.
names, yes.
And you said it was a low voice, very...
They were whispering, like soft.
Can you actually tell us with any certainty what race that person was based? You admit you did tell the police initially you thought it was Caucasian,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But is that something, looking at me, would you really be able to tell that
No.
from what you heard?
Objection, Your Honor. That calls for, that invades the province of the jury. The facts are the facts.
He's asking about her opinion here, and to the extent that he's asking about it,
Improper opinion testimony.
well, you've already asked her about her opinion as to the people outside her door. So to that extent, that's been opened up, and I'll allow that to continue, although not through, it's got to be through proper question.
Well, just as you're sitting here right now, Ms. Cataneo, can you tell us whether you think it was what race the person
No.
was based?
Honestly, no.
And do you know Mr. Cooper's speech patterns at all? Or did you know his at the time?
I never heard of it.
Okay. And just to make clear with regard to Ms. Tobie, you said she drank regularly most every day. She'd start in the morning. Did she drink beer?
Yes.
In spite of that, was she able to function
Yes.
throughout the day and do
Oh, yes.
normal daily activities?
Yes.
Okay, nothing further.
Any recross as to those points?
Yes, Your Honor. In your initial statement to the police, you told them that the voice you heard was a Caucasian voice, correct?
Yes.
They specifically asked you, was the voice a black voice? Isn't that correct?
I don't remember that.
Have you had the opportunity to review your statement?
Yes, but I don't remember saying that. If I said it, it's
understand.
written there that I said it, but I don't remember saying it.
I understand. Just trying to understand exactly what you said. Do you recall on line 7, or page 7, I'm sorry, of your statement taken June the 30th at the Homicide Investigation Unit, line 7 of page 7, or almost line 8, Investigator McGuire asked you this question. It sounded like a Caucasian speaking or a black guy? Question mark. Your answer, no. Like McGuire, white guy? Your answer, yeah.
Then I guess I said it.
Now, initially, you said that the voice you heard was Ron, correct?
The voice?
Yeah, or the person said, identified them as Ron.
Yeah, Ron or Don, I said that.
Were there 1 or 2 people at the door for John?
It sounded like the same voice, but I couldn't hear. He was talking so soft, I couldn't understand what he was saying. Either he was saying Ron or Don. And then I asked him again, and then he said it again the same way, and I couldn't understand him.
Could have it been 2 people at the door?
But I don't think so.
Could have it been a Ron and a Don?
I don't know. I don't think so, though.
What is the basis of your conclusion that it was not 2 people? Is it an assumption?
No, it's just that I couldn't understand what he was saying. If he was saying, my name is Ron or my name is Don, is what I'm trying to tell you.
Did you see who was at the door?
Of course not.
Okay, so you don't know if there was 1 or 2 or even more people?
No.
Thank you.
Do you have anything for recross only on the points on?
Just on that point, Your Honor, Ms. Cataneo, the statement you gave to the police this evening, this was right after your son had been murdered on your
Yes.
doorstep,
Yes.
right? And you were telling, did you tell them that it sounded like a very soft voice? You did think it sounded white, but it was very soft.
Right.
Difficult time hearing. Did you tell them that?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.